Indiana's very own CBS 4 This Morning starts now.
It might not look like much, but the roads are in rough shape. Icy conditions causing crashes across central Indiana.
It's just so hard to keep up with accident after accident. That's why it's just a barrage of tweets from me because things just keep popping up.
This is what we're dealing with this morning, you guys. And then you hit your brakes, but they don't work.
Sprinkle or mist, and you add that into those temperatures that are below freezing, and boy, it's just going to leave a coating of ice on everything.
So, Frank, I don't think we can say this enough this morning to our viewers. Slow down as you head out there on your way to work or to drop your kids off at school.
6:30, it's bad out there. That might be an understatement. Right now, we have more than 115 school delays, among them Carmel Clay schools. Your Weather Authority team, we've got you covered. We've got team coverage this morning here at 6:30. Let's go to Kyle Inskeep first, out on the roads. And Kyle, you've been there looking around, and I guess you're seeing still patches of this, right?
That's exactly right, Frank. We are heading back towards the northwest side right now, and I can tell you that these side roads are really the concern for drivers. They're what we have seen the most trouble spots on. 465, we've been on that throughout the morning as we go to different sides of the city, and 465 is in decent condition. I don't want to give anyone extra confidence as they're going out there. Don't think that you're going to be doing 70, 75 there. You still need to take it slow. Obviously, black ice is a concern, but 465 and the interstates are definitely in much better condition than these side roads. As we turn here onto this side street, you can see we're going much slower because we're seeing a lot of crashes and slide-offs happen in intersections all across the city right now. We have been checking in with NDOT. I just got a response from one of their spokespersons telling me that they were out overnight, and then yesterday actually pre-treating, and then overnight they were out salting the road. So I think that's obviously why we're seeing better things at 465. But we have been seeing DPW crews that handle the city streets and the side roads out this morning as well, Frank. But I don't think we can say it enough. Take it slow. You are not going to be going as fast as you normally are on your way to school, or whether you're dropping the kids off or heading to work this morning as well. So I'll send it back to you guys there in the studio.
Yeah, Kyle, thanks. And to his point, we've been asking questions about, okay, when did the salt trucks get out? How long have they had to get going on this? Angela Brower just got an update on that, and you're on the northwest side showing us how it is hit or miss depending on where you are and what street it is.
Exactly. And Department of Public Works, I don't know if Kyle was able to say this, saying now that they have 12 trucks out and that they've been out since midnight. But I just talked to some crews that were throwing down salt. They've been through several of these large bags so far, trying to treat nearby parking lots and sidewalks. And they admitted that they got out fairly late, that they didn't get out until 3 o'clock this morning, which was essentially too late to treat some of those conditions because of the spotty, slick areas. When you walk out to your car this morning, you know, it doesn't look all that bad. You might find a little bit of frost on your windshield, kind of like this here. But once you get out on the roads, you look at it and you're like, okay, well, it's just wet. There's not a lot of snow out here, but the icy conditions are what we are watching a very close eye on. People really slowing down this morning as they head to work, and for good reason. We have heard from several counties so far. Overnight, Boone County reporting slow driving, that roads are treacherous there, including 865. Johnson County reporting the roads there are, quote, treacherous. They've already had a few slide-offs, accidents. Bartholomew, the roads are slick there. Morgan County slide-offs, and then in Speedway, slick with specific problems along High School Road, Lyndhurst, and then also Crawfordsville. Now, Frank, you were talking earlier about Hamilton County. Hamilton, along with Hancock, Bartholomew, Delaware specifically, some of the better areas that we saw this morning, really not a lot of problems. But again, it's very spotty out there. So you may be headed out of your neighborhood and everything's good, but once you hit a street, say 71st, you're going to be sliding through intersections, your brake system going kaput. We'd love to know what you're seeing if you hit some of those roads that are a little bit iffy. Once you get to work safely, please share some of those spots on our CBS 4 Indy Facebook page. We can't be everywhere at once, so we'd love to hear from you and help some of our other viewers out as well. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
Yeah, and Ange, one of those on our team that had a personal story this morning. We've had people in our building going the speed limit, far under the speed limit, spinning this morning coming into work.
Right. I mean, we've had coworkers say that they basically slid sideways down that ramp to 71st Street. Yep. I know that 96th Street was a mess. I came in there and it was like therapy time. I was like, I made it, because it was pure ice on the way in. And we're just seeing accident after accident popping up. So it's hard to touch on them all. So we're going to get to the major ones. And one of those new ones on eastbound I-70, you're seeing all these flashing lights here. This is near Ronald Reagan Parkway. With this new one, it's eastbound I-70 blocking that far left lane there and causing some slowing here in this area. We can take a closer look. I mean, this map just gives you an indication as to how bad it is out there and how we should not underestimate these conditions. Taking a look right here, you can see that backup already developing there on eastbound I-70, and another area that has just proven to be absolutely horrible this morning. Southbound I-65, although not closed anymore, still seeing plenty of red there after that earlier accident near Main Street. Also northbound I-65 at Worthsville Road, still seeing slowing there. A new accident also on northbound I-65. This one is right near Whiteland Road. So, I mean, you're just talking accident after issue there on that south side. Also a new accident here. I-74, we thought we were breathing easy. Guess what? Now westbound I-74 at Ronald Reagan Parkway dealing with an issue over there. And there's a look at that north split as well, Rob.
All right, take a deep breath. go. I'll take over for a minute, catch your breath. A lot to talk about. Now, here's the reason why we're having so many of these issues. It's a low precipitation, but a high impact event. It's not been a lot that's rolled through. When you look at the amount that's actually fallen, it's more like a trace that's moved through. There was one little band of some quick snow showers that rolled on by. This added a quick little coating to most locations, but we're also seeing a little bit of these small mist particles, light drizzle that's coming down, and it's falling into an atmosphere that is below freezing, upper 20s to near 30 degrees. We've seen these temperatures hover right around 30 or maybe drop into the upper 20s, and when you add those two combinations together, you get slick roadways, even though it's not a lot that's been fallen. And keep in mind, we had some very heavy rain over the last couple of days, so any treatment that was out there on the roadways, it is gone. You know, when we were below freezing for a while, it was okay to keep the treatment on the roads, a little bit of snow falls, and then it was really not a big deal because the salt helps out. We washed all of that away. We will get above freezing today, 34, but in the meantime, expect freezing drizzle and a few flurries out there. Warmer temperatures on the way. I'll let you know when those arrive, Frank, coming up.
All right, so we're here on air, but look, maybe you can't get to your television. This is a phenomenal tool, the Weather Authority app. If you don't have it, the good news here, it's free of charge. It's going to send you those weather alerts so you know what's coming. It's free for Android and Apple devices. So at 6:37, we have some scary moments at Greenfield Central High School. A 17-year-old posted a video online showing him holding a gun on school property. School was immediately put on lockdown. Police found the 17-year-old in a car with two other teenagers. One juvenile was released. However, the 17-year-old and an 18-year-old could face charges.
Then I saw there was a lot of blood everywhere, and then people were getting shoved down. Like, I can never look at the school the same because I know, what happened.
And they all have to be in shock. A kid describing a day at school like that. Two of his classmates are dead. More than a dozen have been wounded. The gunman, a 15-year-old student at the school. This was in Western Kentucky just about 24 hours ago. And it's not the first school shooting we've seen just this week. On Monday, police say a 16-year-old boy shot a 15-year-old girl in their high school's cafeteria. That girl is recovering in a hospital up near Dallas. We're told they're in good spirits. This is coming from the school. And that particular incident happened in the community of Italy, Texas, about 45 miles south of Dallas. A preliminary hearing will be happening this morning for that 16-year-old who might be tried as an adult. We've had more than 280 school shootings in the U.S. since the Sandy Hook massacre in 2013. Those numbers are coming from Everytown, which is a gun control group created because of Sandy Hook. Several shootings have taken place in Indiana. January 22nd, 2016, 17-year-old Paul Rayner shot a 15-year-old outside Lawrence Central High School. This was after a basketball game. The 15-year-old survived, thank heavens. Rayner was sentenced to 8 years in prison. January 21st, 2014, Andrew Bolt was stabbed and shot multiple times inside an electrical engineering classroom at Purdue. Cody Cousins pleaded guilty. He committed suicide in prison. Since 2013, Everytown has recorded 6 shootings on high school or college campuses in our state. That is sobering. 6:39. Former USA Gymnastics team doctor Larry Nassar could be sentenced as soon as today, and we're going to hear from a man who interviewed him, an Indy Star reporter taking us inside the mind of Larry Nassar. But first, IndyCar drivers, they're pretty fast, but can they keep up in our Fast Four? Rachel Bogle going one-on-one with Alexander Rossi as he's competing on the amazing race. And let's just say 4 good questions, 4 good answers.
And nobody should be going fast this morning whenever it comes to these black ice-coated roads. This accident on eastbound I-70 blocking one lane, well, that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to issues. Taking a look at our map, that's what we're dealing with today. The other issue my eye is on, aside from this one, would be down on southbound I-65 and northbound I-65 there near Greenwood, with 3 accidents dotting that interstate there in both directions. So we have the latest on that area, as well as some of the newest accidents popping up in your area. And of course, you can get all the updates at Rachel Bogle on my social media, because we can't fit it all in here.
Watching Rose this morning at 6:43 on CBS 4 this morning. Why are we watching Rose? Because very little precipitation has caused a whole lot of trouble. This is Drive Cam on West 56th Street on the northwest side of Indianapolis. You see that white on the side of the road? That is a blatant example of what I am talking about. It doesn't look like this on all roads, because it depends on where you are with this event. We've got the traffic authority, Rachel Bogle, talking traffic in just a few minutes. Now, every Wednesday night, right here on CBS 4, we're rooting for Team IndyCar, also known as Connor Daly and Alexander Rossi, crisscrossing the globe on the amazing race. So we got Rachel Bogle, who caught up with Rossi. He won the world's greatest race, the 100th running of the Indy 500, now gearing up for this amazing race. Is it hard for him? I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, how hard can that really be, right? But the thing is, he did disclose that the guy's never been camping before, so it might have been a little harder than we initially thought. I got to go one-on-one to find out how one of the fastest men in the world prepared for this amazing race for our edition of Fast 4.
Very close second, Alex and Connor, congratulations. Team
How do you even prepare for something like this?
You don't. My preparation was going into REI and like buying things that I thought would make sense when you go camping-ish. It was weird because they don't tell you what you can pack. They just tell you what you can't pack. So it's kind of like the world is your oyster in terms of what you're gonna bring.
So what can you not pack?
Anything electronic, basically.
Okay. So you're cut off.
You can't pack maps. Not that you know the countries you were going to.
Right.
You can't pack like language booklets, anything that would give you more knowledge, I guess.
Like a leg up.
Like a leg up.
Yeah,
but you can pack as much energy bars and soap and headlamps as you want. But yeah, there's no books, I guess, or Kindles.
Right. Is there anything that you didn't pack that you wish you would have once you got into it?
I think I would have loved like protein packets, like powder.
Yeah.
Because like I packed some of those like energy gels and stuff.
Like the marathon runners use?
Yeah, but that was just gross. And it didn't actually fill you up. So yeah, it gave you calories, but it wasn't great.
It doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do anything. So I would have liked that to have some like substance, because you actually, on the legs of the race, you don't really eat.
Who do you think the most prepared team was?
I think Cody and Jessica are whatever. I mean, he was in the military. I mean, he was a Marine for 2 tours. So like we saw him kind of show up at the starting line, because you don't actually interact with the contestants until the starting line. So when we found out who he was, it was like, all right, yeah, well, you should probably just give him the prize right now.
We had a nice long sit down, and that was really just the tip of the iceberg with what we learned. My favorite bit of insider info that he shared during that interview was Connor actually was not his first choice of teammate for Team IndyCar. So Which driver was? Well, that's a part of my web extra, and you can get that answer by checking online right now at CBS4Indy.com. That answer might surprise some people, and for others, it might just make sense. You got to go there to find out, though.
Yeah, amazing race tonight at 8 p.m. every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Hopefully, Team IndyCar can stay in it. Now, speaking of hopes, look, we hope you hear us when we say this is not a normal commute. Today is not normal.
You might think it is, because when you head out, there's nothing, you know, as you look out your door, it doesn't make sense. You're like, oh, you know, it looks maybe a little wet, kind of like we've seen the last 2 days. Not the case. No. And we all experienced that on our way in today, and we're seeing that play out in the worst way on our roads. So I have just been updating, and our latest issue here, once again, we've had our eye on I-65 plenty this morning. Southbound I-65, we have an accident there. You can see vehicles pulled off to that far right side at that exit ramp there. Also, I'm going to take a closer look here in just a bit after we take a look at I-70, but that was just one of a few accidents there. Another one causing some major slowing eastbound I-70 at Ronald Reagan Parkway. That was blocking that left lane there, and we are seeing still a closure on southbound I-65. This time it starts at County Line Road, goes down to Main Street, and of course there's that new accident northbound I-65 at Whiteland Road, but there was also another one just north of there at Worthsville Road. So plenty of things to keep our eyes out for this morning. Rob?
All right, I want to talk about why we've had so many issues, and you can really see that in just this one graphic. I know it doesn't have a whole lot, but first of all, look at the kind of misty view that we have. A lot of freezing drizzle coming out there, very small droplets, but they add a coating to everything, and with the temperature holding below freezing, it's just going to be a sheet of ice on everything. And look at this, precipitation. Now, it's not very much, 0.01. But all it took was that 0.01 in the form of a little freezing drizzle or some light snow flurries to add a sheet of ice to everything. And you really can't even see a whole lot on satellite and radar until you get in close. And I've been saying I really turned up the sensitivity so that you could see some of those drizzle particles or even a few snow flurries that have rolled through, and they're falling into temperatures that are in the upper 20s to near 30. This is probably going to stay with us the next couple of hours or so, although I think the intensity of the precipitation should come down a bit. It's still going to be a little bit of freezing drizzle, and the temperatures will not get above freezing for at least another couple of hours. Now, as far as what to expect here, well, we're trying to move all of this out of here, but even into the afternoon, we may see some light flurries before we finally get some drier air to move in. The drier air should help to dry up a lot of that leftover moisture, but watch for slick spots, even if we get above freezing and then dip back down below freezing tonight. Although we won't be adding additional precipitation, there may be some spots that could be a little bit slick. Look at Thursday, though. Once we get into Thursday, boy, the sky's really clear, and we open things up to a very nice pattern over the next several days. Friday's the same way, as we'll keep clear skies in there for at least the first half of your Friday before the clouds move back in. Temperatures, 30s today. That's not so bad. As we look to Thursday, well, we get into the mid-40s. That's good. We're moving in the right direction, and more of that warm air moves our way as we look to Friday with the high temperatures getting into the 50s. So it is a steady increase in the temperatures all the way through the rest of this week. Get through today, and I promise you it gets better with 52 for both days, Friday and Saturday. Temperatures today, 34. We will cool things down tonight, back down into the 20s, 24. But after that, all the temperatures there as we head toward the weekend are above freezing. We won't go back down below freezing until next week. Frank.
All right, so stay safe. 6:50, another check of roads from our team coverage coming up. Plus, we're talking with the Indy Star reporter who conducted the only known interview with former USA Gymnastics Dr. Larry Nassar. Nassar today could be sentenced for sexually abusing people he called patients. .53, so much to discuss this morning. First, we have to talk about icy roads. Here we are going into the heat of the morning commute. We already have 140 school delays, so we are on top of that with team coverage. And then there's another big story we're on top of.
I'm Trisha Hart, keeping you up to the minute. 6 days of victim statements, but today could be the day former USA Gymnastics Dr. Larry Nassar learns his fate. He pleaded guilty to 7 counts of criminal sexual conduct, but the judge opened his sentencing hearing to any victim of his sexual abuse. To date, 163 women shared their stories claiming Nassar sexually abused them under the guise of medical treatment.
This man inappropriately touched me, and it was wrong.
The windfall continues. The NCAA announced it's investigating how Michigan State University handled complaints of sexual abuse during Nassar's time there, and AT&T pulled its sponsorship of USA Gymnastics until it feels the organization better protects its athletes. Nassar faces up to 125 years in prison on top of the 60-year sentence he's serving for child pornography.
All right, so this is a treat. We've got a Hoosier giving us some very interesting insight into Dr. Nassar. Indy Star reporter Tim Evans interviewed Nassar back in 2016. An article about that conversation is shedding some new light on Dr. Nassar's demeanor, and Tim really goes into that in that article. And Tim, I just want to go straight to the heart of this. You know, we've seen Nassar write this letter to the judge this week or last week saying he didn't want to listen to all these ladies' stories about what he did to them. What's going through his mind? Do you have an idea of if he understands these allegations and understands what he's being convicted of?
I think he must, or you know, his attorney would have been pleading some sort of mental issue, but you know, I think he must have some way that he can compartmentalize it or not realize it, because again, you know, in my interview with him, he was so adamant that he was innocent and you know, how this was going to harm him, and you know, you can't fathom knowing now that he had molested hundreds of women at the time he was telling me how innocent he was and seeming so sincere.
Now, I think a lot of us now, because of Allie Raceman, particularly of late, we're turning our attention to USA Gymnastics, Michigan State University. How soon did someone know? What's your sense of how things just never seem to come together and put the right focus on what was going on with Nassar and how he was treating these ladies?
Well, you know, we investigated USA Gymnastics, so I know a little more about that. And I think, you know, people have said they were more interested in medals and success and money than in the welfare of the athletes. Michigan State's an interesting situation here because, you know, people were told at Michigan State as early as in the late 90s, 97, I think the first young lady came forward. And the fact that they didn't do anything is you know, really troubling, and I think it, you know, they have a lot of exposure legally.
And that's what most people can't understand is, I think we as normal people, you hear that allegation, you immediately are calling police, you hope. Mm-hmm. Is this just the way some organizations are because of culture and groupthink, this is how they respond to these things? I
think some of it is that. The other part is, I think, you know, that was unique because Nassar was a doctor and he was so revered, and I think even police and some of those folks deferred to doctors. You know, he must be doing, you know, he wouldn't do this. It's a medical procedure. We just don't, you know, his line was, you just don't understand. It's a very specialized, and you know, it's the layman can't understand this. And he was able to bluff his way through 2 investigations that were kind of kept things quiet for years. And then we came across it, and I spent days, weeks really investigating what procedure would be and when it would be useful. And by the time I interviewed him, I had a pretty good handle on it. And I think we caught him off guard a little bit at that point because he, you know, we didn't fall for his bluff necessarily that he had succeeded with before.
It's not that people did not know either.
Right,
and
right.
That's just becoming very clear. Tim, thank you so much. Tim Evans with the Indy Star. Great article. You should check that out on indystar.com. All right, let's get with Angela Brower outside because you know what? We've been talking a lot about the weather and the traffic and just how hit or miss it can be, and that might be causing some surprise in some of these wrecks.
Exactly. And Frank, you know what? Our viewers are going to step out the door this morning and kind of be scratching their heads because it doesn't really look all that bad. We didn't get a ton of snow. Of course, we had a little bit of rain yesterday and a drizzle overnight. Rob will talk more about that. But the problem is that the ground temperature is a lot colder than the air temperature. We have this temperature gun to really illustrate that. It is below freezing this morning. And so any moisture hitting the surface is basically freezing on contact. And it's really spotty. So if you head out in your neighborhood, maybe isn't that bad. You may hit some of those streets like 71st Street, 465, those bridges and overpasses. Really interesting this morning. A lot of crashes, slide-offs reported as well. DPW reporting that they have 12 trucks out salting right now, so not a lot. We've seen crews out who admittedly said they were late to the game on this, didn't get out until sometimes 3, 4 o'clock this morning, and by then it was essentially too late. The advice to you this morning, take it slow and give yourself plenty of time.
All right, and taking a look at temperatures, look at there, 34 for the high, but we're probably going to stay below freezing with freezing drizzle and flurries expected through the early part of the day. Tonight we'll drop it back down into the 20s. That's our expected temperature, 24 for the overnight low.
And as you take a look at this map, I mean, it has just been a treacherous morning, to say the least. We can't even mention all of these accidents. We're just going to go over the ones that could impact you the most. And I'm sharing all the others, of course, on social media. But northbound I-65 at Worstville Road, you do have that far left lane blocked, seeing plenty of slow conditions. Earlier, southbound I-65 was closed between Worstville Road and Whiteland Road. It's now open, but still a bit slow there in that area. Also checking in to our northeast side, 71st Street at Shadeland Road. We have a new accident there. Also, the ramp is partially blocked from southbound I-69 to 465. And then taking a look as well up in Pendleton, the left lane is blocked there on southbound I-69 near State Street. Starting to see some big backup with that one. And then heading back here into the metro area, looks like we have cleared up with this earlier accident at eastbound I-70 near Ronald Reagan Parkway. But as you can see here, still pretty slow as they wrap that up.
All right, so we're wrapping up going to New York, but we're back at 25 minutes as we stay up to the minute on what's happening here closer to home. We'll see you in a bit.
She's been in touch with you guys multiple times, and she tells me that she hasn't heard anything back.
We have someone out there today, the 15th, and then get everything wrapped up.
You don't have someone out today because I'm standing in the house right now.
But what if one person dies, you wouldn't?
Right.
Even if it
doesn't matter.
In this first year, what has the president accomplished?
How much time you got?
At some point, isn't the bill going to come due, and isn't there going to be some financial impact to the residents?
IMPD Chief Roach says the process did what it's designed to do, but calls this decision disappointing.
I feel terrible about what transpired.
I just don't understand how a verdict come back not guilty or to keep your jobs when you was in the wrong.
So many people emotional after hearing about the efforts that it took to try and revive this 1-year-old and to find out that this 1-year-old baby girl didn't make it.
I want people to really, really sit and realize where we are. A 1-year-old baby girl lost her life this morning, senselessly. And if that doesn't move you to action, I don't know what can.
I'd sacrifice almost anything in my life to be able to answer that question right now. I can't.
I was diagnosed July 17th.
February 14th, 2017.
Summer 2014, so I was 13 years old.
When I was like 2 years old.
These kids are part of a club no one wants to be in.
Went to Riley Hospital.
Got diagnosed.
A club they can recall the exact moment they joined.
We started to see a larger bump in my left leg.
I was really tired. I had a lump in my neck. I had a brain tumor.
Owen, Grant, Zane, Chase, Cooper, Lena, Zach, Elena, Athena.
We can relate to each other.
These are the faces of pediatric cancer.
I mean, I don't know, sometimes it's hard to cope with that, this happened.
It honestly just makes you think, why are there so many? Why do people have to go through this pain? There's no reason for it.
They wanted to come here to share their stories. Some are meeting each other for the first time, but already understand what they've each gone through.
It's kind of cool, interesting, and strange at the same time. Because you get to see other people that have gone through the same thing you have.
Their diagnoses include thyroid cancer, a brain tumor, leukemia, Ewing sarcoma, and with each diagnosis means years of chemotherapy, radiation, surgeries. Today, some are in remission, some still under treatment.
This one was when I had lost all my hair. That was my favorite animal to sleep with. I was getting blood here.
This is after an inpatient stay, after getting chemo.
This bear sat in my chair the whole year. Yeah. Most of it. I actually had a bear in my chair too.
Linking these kids beyond their tough battles, they all live or have spent significant time in Johnson County.
For me, honestly, it's gotten so bad that, when you hear, oh, another kid's gotten diagnosed at this school, it's just like another day.
Some parents are on a mission to figure out why.
Every time a kid gets diagnosed, our hearts just break.
Her stomach sank.
Zane's stepmom, Stacy Davidson, and Carrie Reinhardt, whose daughter, Emma Grace, died at 13 from brain cancer, started the group If It Was Your Child to seek answers.
How do I not put up this fight when she fought so hard?
Johnson County's pediatric cancer rate is higher than state and U.S. rates, but it's not the highest in Indiana. To date, the Indiana State Department of Health has not found a pediatric cancer cluster there or any type of cancer cluster in the state. These parents disagree. If It Was Your Child counts 57 cases of pediatric cancer in Johnson County since 2008, 24 of them in Franklin.
I think it's good to get more awareness and to get people aware, like it's a problem.
And we start at 6 with the breaking developments out of that tragic duck boat accident in Branson, Missouri. We now know 11 members of an Indianapolis family were on that boat that capsized. 9 of them were killed. CBS 4 talked with one of the surviving members of that family who was on that boat.
The captain had told us, don't worry about grabbing the life jacket. You won't need them. So nobody grabbed them because we listened to the captain as he told us to stay seated. However, in doing that, when it was time to grab them, it was too late.
Let's go right to St. Vincent Hospital and get an update on his condition.
Today, the thin blue line was shattered. Deputy Jacob Pickett, a 5-year veteran of the Boone County Sheriff's Office, was shot today at approximately 9:40 a.m. Our hearts go out to his wife, Jen, their 2 young boys, Jake's mom and dad, and all of his family. We are deeply saddened to say that Jake will not survive his injuries.
We have team coverage tonight from the investigation to the victims. CBS 4's Jesse Wells tonight with the latest on the investigation.
I mainly heard gunshots. The shooting was right next to us. We were all really scared. All my friends ran to the corner for safety, and me and Ryan Scott stood there and we were throwing chairs and stuff, building a blockade so they couldn't get in.
Since about 10 o'clock this morning, we have seen hundreds of family members and parents coming here frantically searching for their child. I want to show you the scene right now. As you can see, law enforcement still here. Again, we are told inside the high school right now, there are hundreds of parents and loved ones waiting patiently for their child. We're told those students are actually being patted down, and then one by one, they are being reunited with their parents. Joining me now is Austin Duncan. Austin, you're a sophomore here at the high school. Tell me what happened this morning.
So basically what happened is that we were watching the West Middle School shootings that happened. We were watching the live feed, and then like 30 seconds later, it just happened. Code red, hide.
We are following some breaking news outside of Richmond, a shooting outside the intermediate school there. Our news gathering partners, the Indy Star, saying that first 911 call came in at 8:21 from Dennis Intermediate School. That's just 6 minutes after classes began there.
My child's not coming to what could be a bloodbath.
The fear in her voice now could be felt even more hours earlier in the middle school.
You could literally hear the sound, like you could hear like the fear in like the principal's voice when she said lockdown, and then everyone just started like crying and was getting scared.
That's a lot of pursuits, and it's a lot of danger to the public, a lot of danger to the officers.
The numbers also showed pursuit crashes climbed from 41 in 2014 to 139 last year. And over the same 4-year period, injuries to citizens more than tripled, climbing from 18 to 60. 4 people have been killed.
What does that do to you the morning you find out about that?
You feel horrible, right?
What we have in here.
Joyce Moss is a sexual assault nurse examiner.
We'll use what's called a rolling technique.
Her full-time job is to collect these kits and hand them over to police.
We document any injuries we find. Last year was our busiest year.
What can feel medical and sterile is far from it. These kits represent people. Sexual assault victims like Eileen Potenza and her daughter Allie.
It was violent, it was brutal, it was very demeaning.
In 2013, 6 men broke into the Potenzas' home. For 2 hours, they terrorized the family. Allie was sexually assaulted by multiple men. Eileen shot twice trying to escape, forced to drive to an ATM, and sexually assaulted in her car.
And then I remember waking up in a room full of people in my hospital room.
When it was over, a nurse collected a rape kit.
You want to say anything to the victims?
Police quickly caught the suspects, and they were later convicted.
We have a society that's shifted.
We were kind of a high-profile case. There was a lot of news around this, and maybe that was not typical of the way it always happens.
Our CBS 4 Problem Solvers investigation found that to be true. Across Indiana, hundreds, if not thousands, of rape kits are being collected each year. But no one can tell you exactly how many.
It's just kind of a mess. We have a statute.
Lori Gray with the Indiana Coalition to End Sexual Assault says state laws have precious little to say about the kits and what to do with them.
The statute that we have is inconsistent.
We've not done this before.
The state released its first ever audit of untested kits last year, but I discovered that audit is incomplete and inconsistent. About half of the kits had no clear reason they weren't tested, and almost a third, 31%, were listed as no crime or false report. That's troubling since various national statistics estimate only 2 to 8% of reports turn out to be unfounded. Even more concerning, Marion County only reported 1 year's worth of numbers.
And I understand from an audit standpoint.
So I went to the person who compiled the data to get a more accurate number.
At this point, do you know how many kits you have?
Our estimation is around 6,500.
Chrissy Brault is a 31-year-old woman from southern Indiana who is trying to kick heroin and meth. This is her personal video diary that she's sharing, a series of entries she recorded over the summer. And this is as real as it can get.
Because I don't feel like it's going to be okay, because I'm not okay. I'm not okay.
She followed the rules.
I'm going to get my cigarettes. We keep them locked up. We have certain times for cigarette breaks.
But Chrissy had a secret.
I'm scared the cops are going to come knocking on the door.
There was a warrant out for her arrest that she had ignored. Just a month after Chrissy's hearing, I learned that Chrissy had been jailed. I've agreed not to reveal why she was incarcerated because her public defender said that it could jeopardize her current case. I was allowed to speak with Chrissy October 19th.
I'm doing it. I'm trying to hold in here. I do. I've been better, I've been worse.
Andrew goes fishing in all these unseemly places and finds about 100 monitors a month, which is a small fraction of the 4,500 people under surveillance at any given time. They're being watched. But it's still much an honor system. You have to trust the offenders won't run.
We can drill it down within feet where somebody's at.
Of the 4,500 GPS signals monitored in Marion County each day, only the people with the highest flight risks are actively monitored 24/7.
He's got 56 alarms.
The rest only come on track group's radar when the monitor triggers an alarm.
Yep, here it is. It's still blinking.
For the most part, the equipment is, you're able to cut it off.
Ramsey Banshu.
18 names.
Richard Burleson.
18 flags.
Ralph Chapman.
For 18 veterans.
Donald Chestnut.
All but forgotten.
Our focus is to give them the most dignified burial that we can.
A burial.
Bert French Jr.
For veterans whose remains were unclaimed.
Claude Harper.
For some, it's been months.
John Shelley.
Others.
Rex Keller.
More than 10 years.
For people, unfortunately, kind of out of sight, out of mind, that you forget about them, or you're just maybe still not ready.
Gary Coots.
So in front of a crowd of complete strangers,
Stephen Kinsler.
Each name was read aloud.
David Legg.
Each name given recognition.
If you don't personalize it and let them know who these people were, it's just not as meaningful.
It's hard to imagine.
Carl Maynard.
Why no one came for these heroes.
Richard Mross.
But for those here today,
Robert Nelson.
The why doesn't matter.
James Powell.
What matters is that 18 names are heard.
Billy Stoltz.
18 flags folded.
Lindsay Tolliver.
And 18 veterans.
Lewis Wadsworth.
Remembered. In Marion. Brett Cast.
Ready.
CBS 4 News.
You said she was lazy and she didn't work hard for what she had.
No, I did not. I never said that. They can roll the film.
1 year into the presidency of Donald Trump, we wanted to hear directly from Indiana voters.
Look at the way we're fighting
today.
Good to meet you. Welcome. So for the past month, in 2 separate groups, we gathered 16 Hoosiers, invited them to City Market in downtown Indianapolis.
If you want to tuck some of the cord in, that'll probably help.
Mic'd them up and asked them to lay it all on the table.
I'm a brown girl from Pakistan, and I stand with President Trump.
He came down that elevator in New York saying Mexicans are rapists, they're criminals.
I want you to give me a word or phrase that describes President Trump's first year in office.
Absolutely winning.
Winning.
We're going to get so sick of winning, but we're winning. I love it.
I'm going to say chaotic.
Yeah, that's a better word.
Say what?
You took chaotic.
Yeah.
I think it's shameful, the rhetoric that's been coming out of his office and from his own Twitter feed.
I'd say disappointing.
I'd say brilliant.
I would say too much drama.
Too much drama.
So working for the American people.
Panelists from our Sunday morning show In Focus picked the participants. 8 voted for Hillary Clinton, 8 backed Donald Trump. But as we quickly discovered a year later, it's still much more complicated than that.
Is Hillary president right now?
Thank God she's not.
Well, there you go.
In this first year, what has the president accomplished?
She's been making a list.
She's good to go.
How much time you got?
I've been shot. I can't do much anything. Just like get shot. Please hurry up.
Wasn't quite sure if I was alive or not. I've been shot.
It's not easy for Tony Ong to talk about the night he nearly died. September 1st, 2017, Ong was working as a manager at this small apartment complex in Muncie.
Getting ready to walk into his apartment, I asked him, hey, Rodney, you coming down now to pay rent?
He never imagined a simple question could lead to such violence. The tenant he knows as Rodney Patterson snapped.
And I didn't see what was in his hand. All I did was see a flash and then felt a pain in my chest. Excuse me.
Where did the actual shooting happen? Did it happen through the door?
This body cam video shows the chaotic scene as first responders rush him to the hospital.
And the police and the doctors are both amazed that I survived because, like I said, dead center to the chest. Missed my heart by maybe an inch.
Back at the apartment, Ong's assailant barricaded and ready for battle.
When we found him behind the door, he was wearing a helmet, a motorcycle type helmet, and a lot of thick clothing along with 2 firearms and some knives.
Rodney Patterson, also known to Muncie police as Keenan Aberman, a felon previously convicted of multiple violent crimes and at one point declared legally insane, in possession of not 1, but 2 guns.
He purchased those firearms and within 6 hours had shot his landlord.
Both guns bought at this Indiana Rural King. We wanted to know, how can a convicted felon legally buy a gun? And here's how he did it. Surveillance video shows Aberman perusing the gun section of the Rural King around 4 o'clock that afternoon, where he submits a federal background check form. CBS 4 obtained a copy of that form. Take a close look at question 11C. It asks if he's ever been convicted of a felony. The box he checks, no. Is there policy change that's going to be connected to this? The office unveiled new cutting-edge iris technology to identify inmates.
It is a national database.
But the jail commander told me it wouldn't stop inmates from using other names.
If today that same situation happened, the results would be the same, unfortunately.
I'm going to look at the camera.
I question that, since the $15,000 program is supposed to make it easier to keep track of inmates.
This is cutting-edge science.
Sheriff John Layton told me the Brem case is about more than that, since his real name was discovered but was not used correctly in court.
Technology is wonderful, but we still have to rely on humans at times.
This is a news story that was run by CBS 4.
Days later, at a meeting of Marion County's Criminal Justice Planning Council,
And you'll see, not the same guy.
the sheriff's office played our CBS 4 problem solver's story.
Lisa wants to know how this happened too.
The sheriff asked the council to send this issue to its working group, which will do research and recommend changes that could fix it.
This is 100% true, and we are working diligently to get it fixed.
Combat is horrifying. It's fast and furious, and it's horrifying.
It was the most deadly time to serve in Vietnam, right after the Tet Offensive and near the height of U.S. involvement in the war. A time that was immortalized in one iconic image that came to symbolize Vietnam. an image that just turned 50 years old, a picture that provides a place in history for one Indiana veteran.
The mission was, as always, looking for pockets of NVA. And there was a whole division element out there somewhere.
Tim Wittenberg was only 20 years old when he went out on that mission with the 101st Airborne in the Oshaw Valley. On April 1st, 1968, they were ambushed by North Vietnamese regulars.
The firing just started, that's what I remember. You know, I don't know if anybody saw the NVA.
Wittenberg and his unit quickly fought off the attack, but men were wounded and needed evacuation by helicopter out of the dense jungle.
With machetes, we had to make a hole in the canopy, triple canopy jungle. That's what you see laying on the ground there.
A young Associated Press photographer named Art Greenspan was on that patrol and by chance caught the rescue perfectly in frame. Tim had lost his helmet in the chaos and turned just as the photographer snapped the iconic image.
You ever be walking anywhere and you got a feeling somebody's watching you from behind? I just happened to look back, glance back to see, and I saw Art there kneeling, Art Greenspan taking the picture.
For Alexis Jones and DeJour Blackman and hundreds of other families leaving this hospital without their child,
it is hard.
It's meant hope.
And I really like to use the Doppler.
Music therapists recording patients' heartbeats and turning them into a song.
We want to create positive memories in a stressful place so that they have something besides fear to look back on. It's proof that their child was alive, that they were here on this earth, and that they made an impact.
A meaningful gift.
They want everything they can get to remember their child.
Sweet sounds. One that is everlasting.
Have something to remember her by. It's soothing to know that we would have had that.
After only about 10 minutes of searching, we found Newcastle's famous turkey. He may look like he's minding his own business now, but neighbors say he's actually causing quite a bit of problems.
It's created some excitement here in Newcastle.
Oh, he's real popular.
This small Indiana community has a notorious new celebrity.
Over the past 3 weeks, we've seen it quite often.
Strolling along State Road 3, this wild turkey has become the talk of the town.
It's unreal. It's comical.
Yeah, he's here every day.
He doesn't have a name.
I've just been calling him the Newcastle turkey.
Did you have a good day? Yeah. Good.
I think that we are actually beyond a success story.
Jess Hooker's GoFundMe success story started more than 2 years ago. She created a page on the crowdfunding site to raise money for her daughter, Addie.
Is that your project?
Addie lives with refractory epilepsy,
These all the ones you've got right?
a condition that triggers seizures almost daily.
There you go.
The New Palestine family wanted to raise money for a seizure dog that would give them more freedom and more peace of mind.
Our story was based in hope and in help and in a young girl thriving. It's just, who can't support something like that?
You can't get too much physical activity at this school, but we found districts all over central Indiana where 30 minutes of recess is hard to find.
When my son started kindergarten, it was 15 minutes, and I was shocked.
They actually might get more out of their students if they give them more recess.
15 minutes on the playground. That's all kids in Carmel Clay schools can count on.
Their needs are not being met.
The Dean Wilderness is also part of the Hoosier National Forest and has become a popular spot for hikers who walk the miles of trails within its boundaries. But they would have to look closely to see a landmark that's become the focus of a fight here.
And so it's sacred ground.
4 miles in on a trail that was once a road, the Hayes family cemetery is slowly being swallowed up by the wilderness. The worn headstones of some of Indiana's first settlers barely peek up from the brush.
That's creepy. Well, like I've been doing this since 1993. That's you right there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's 1999. That's me.
81-year-old Kenneth Hayes has led family trips to their cemetery for years. He and other members of the family had an agreement with the Hoosier National Forest to drive them in a department vehicle on the often hazardous trail.
Sometimes there's 8, 10, there's been more than 10 on occasions that went with me.
But all that changed earlier this year when the local forest supervisor decided the guided trips would have to end, cutting off access for someone as old as Kenneth Hayes.
Suggesting him ride a horseback or walk the 4 miles through a forest to get to his family's graves is an insult.
It's a simple question. Why did you say you were going to self-fund? You weren't going to self-fund in the general.
The camera was rolling when Mike Braun arrived at a campaign event this summer.
Yeah, I'll go tell the police. Why?
There to capture the moment, a campaign tracker for the Indiana Democratic Party.
Would you mind leaving?
Yep. Back up to see the encounter started like this.
Hey, Mike, got a question for you.
Get out.
Sir?
Get out.
Got
Get
a
out.
question for you. Why did
Get
you
out.
lie
Get
about
out.
self-funding? Why
Get
did you
out.
lie about self-funding? Sir, why did you lie about self-funding? Why did you give yourself $1 million?
No matter your interpretation of what you just saw, this confrontation shows the high stakes and oftentimes unseen world of political tracking.
All right, so what's the typical profile of a tracker? Who wants to do something like this?
So a tracker is usually someone just starting out in politics.
Getting back to what you said about the congressional races, the Democrats need only 23 seats to flip the balance of power there in Congress, but not expecting that.
And I want you to see the room right now. People are just packed in here intently watching those results.
We want to talk about social media, right? This is a huge factor in what we're seeing in terms of the conversation as these results come in. Let's bring in Andrew Clark, Facebook editor for the Indy Star.
Patience is going to need to be the operative word. I want to step out of the way and give you a look at what we've been seeing. This group of people behind us, they are still currently counting the absentee ballots. We're told they've been here since 8:30.
Chris Wright is tracking the storms moving out and the chances of snow moving in.
Yeah, Bob and Debbie, our weather's going to go from one extreme to the other across the state. We're watching the scattered showers make their way out of central Indiana, drier air back to our west. Still a few scattered showers over the southeast corner of the state. Some moderate rainfall down I-65 between Seymour and Scottsburg. Really not a whole lot going on back to the west. The tornado watch has been canceled for central Indiana. No severe weather threat for tonight, but now we've got colder air moving in on the day when we had record-setting rainfall. Almost 4 inches of rain fell here in the city.
One of the hardest hit areas tonight was in Tippecanoe County.
Tornado warnings were issued and high winds down trees and power lines. CBS 4's Alexis McAdams continues our team coverage now with a look at that damage.
That's right. This is some pretty serious storm damage. We're talking about trees ripped right out of the ground, power lines down on houses. And take a look behind me. You can see this massive tree down here in Lafayette. Crews have to come out now and chop this thing down because people have places to go. People are trying to get home tonight after work and they can't get past these trees. They're blocking several intersections. Lafayette police tell me at least 15 reported down. One actually fell right on top of a house, another on a car. This is expensive damage we're talking about from these strong straight line winds. EMA tells us they won't know exactly how strong those winds were until they continue to survey. They'll have more information tomorrow. Neighbors tell me, though, winds and rain picked up around 7, and that's when they heard those tornado sirens. When they came outside, their yards were a dangerous mess.
Yeah, it was really windy, and we'd heard the tornado sirens. So we just stayed in the house.
There are slick spots and black ice. We slid a little earlier when we first got on the highway and started driving tonight. So that's something to keep in mind. A little snow is no bother for folks braving the cold for a little fun.
I have 2 pairs of long socks. I got 2 pairs of leggings on.
And then I shake the captain's hand and the lights go on, the just bulbs popping all over the place. And you think to yourself, this is more than a game, this is history. And it all started to change because of a basketball game.
55 years later, he's enjoying watching this team make their own history.
Hi, Sister Jean.
And seeing Sister Jean become America's March Madness sweetheart.
She's such a beautiful part of this whole thing.
When he came to Indy in 1961, Brabham's rear-engine Cooper Climax changed the course of history and ushered in the rear-engine revolution. Sir Jack was arguably the world's biggest name in racing at the time, but it took his oldest son Jeff until about age 10 to realize how different his family was.
You know, when you go to school and you know, the kids ask you, what did you do over the weekend? And I used to say, well, actually I went to Belgium and watched my dad race, you know, and then you get a kind of a funny reaction, obviously, when that happens.
A dream of dancing on the sidelines is shared among the women vying for 26 coveted spots. And even for veterans hoping to return to the squad, the process of earning those boots is still a battle.
And it gets more and more difficult at auditions, looking around, seeing all these girls who are beautiful, not only outside, but they're amazing women. They all want each other to succeed. And then they have kicks up to their nose, and they all have their right splits, left splits, center splits, just everything. They're the total package. And every year that level goes up.
You are looking live at Little Caesars Arena, downtown Detroit, the new home of the Pistons and the Red Wings. But it's all about March Madness this week. Hello again, everyone. Along with Chris Hagan, I am Chris Widlick. The countdown is on as Purdue and Butler are just a few days away from beginning their journey on the road to the Final Four.
So when we toured the zoo this week, he showed me the ropes at the shark tank.
How many times have you touched a shark?
A bunch. I don't know.
Why don't you go first?
I have to go first? Okay.
Release. Just let it go and do its thing.
And yes, I had to give it a try.
Navajo, Indiana's finest.
Block says anyone can be a bad axe thrower.
I've thrown with 81-year-old grandmas who put their grandchildren to shame.
It's unusual living here at the governor's residence because there are a lot of people in and out, and we don't feel always like, you know, it's our own, I guess. And it's the people's house, so we understand that. But having a pet here, I think, just makes it feel a lot warmer, and everyone enjoys meeting everyone when they come visit.
When the gates open and you drive that drive with the tree-lined drive, it's like being on a movie set.
It's not far away, really, just north of 96th Street on Ditch Road in Carmel. But when you get here, it's easy to feel transported to someplace else, someplace magnificent. The Asherwood Estate sits on 106 acres and is dominated by a main house that's more than 50,000 square feet.
In an alcove in a small college museum lies an Egyptian mummy, an ancient relic with a history known and unknown. Her name, Ta'an. We know that she dates back 300 years before Christ, about the time of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. A time celebrated in an elaborate 1960s movie starring Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton.
Is really that she was a young woman, maybe 22, that she was both very well loved and cared for, but also experienced difficulties in her life.
All right, give me some guidance here. Where do you want to go?
Let's turn north on Illinois Street.
The man responsible for all those roundabouts is Mayor Jim Brainerd. He has ostensibly been the CEO of Carmel.
This is one of our projects from years ago.
For more than 20 years.
You go back to the Roman Empire. They figured out how to move goods and people, and that's the essence of any successful city or nation, I think. You've got to move people and commerce through your city. Started to build them, people like them.
Brainerd has built more than 100 roundabouts.
It's hard for people who've never seen one before.
He says they save time, they save money, and even save lives when compared to traditional intersections.
It's really about speed. The human error rate never changes. We still have accidents. The difference is that they're minor fender benders, not serious accidents where people die or go to the hospital.
Right. It's really a dream come true that he had hoped for several years ago.
Which is why Caleb is especially grateful to have received a certificate of completion from IPS and that he was accepted into this 16-person program at IUPUI's campus called SIGHT.
The goal is that, first of all, what we know about people, the students that we serve, are that they learn most effectively and most efficiently in real life situations.
Here, aides like Laura Miller coach the students, but then slowly back off, allowing for more independent learning and living.
Nice job.
It's incredibly rewarding to see, all the hard work that he has put in come to life.
Here at CBS 4, we know reading is important. We do it every day. So that's why we're teaming up with the Indy Fuel to help promote literacy throughout central Indiana. I met up with my new friend, Olivier from the Fuel, to kick things off and to share a morning of fun with a big group of first graders at Collegewood Elementary.
You guys excited?
We talked a little bit about our lives.
Does anybody know where Canada is? It's up north, right? Is that where you guys are pointing up? Yeah, it's up north.
How many folks actually watch the news every once in a while? Every once in a while. Wow. That's good. It's good to know stuff.
Shared a few laughs.
Where's Maple Syrup from?
It's from Canada, guys.
And of course, read a few books.
Then she leaned toward me and cheered. She being nice.
No reading between the lines here. Reading rules.